When I was younger, I wasn't really interested in Resident Evil as a series of games. There wasn't a specific reason, it wasn't like I had a grudge or something against Resident Evil, but I didn't anticipate that I would enjoy a horror game, to be honest. However, a few years ago that changed, and I saw some clips from the Resident Evil 2 remake on YouTube. With my curiosity piqued after watching a few minutes, I bought the game right away, and then I even bought the Resident Evil 3 remake, and recently I got the Resident Evil 4 remake. To be 100% honest, there's a reason why I bought all those Resident Evil games. It's because they're absolutely fantastic. Also, I guess it helps that I finally decided to start watching The Walking Dead, so my interest in zombie-related stuff has definitely been high as of late. I also recently heard that Resident Evil 2 made its way onto Xbox Game Pass, and I realized a lot of people who may be on the fence, are hesitant, or aren't sure if they'll enjoy the game will probably be thinking about this question. Is it worth playing Resident Evil 2 in 2024? Well, let's take a dive into what Resident Evil 2 is, who should play it, and why or why not I recommend it. I'll do my utmost best to avoid giving away any spoilers, so rest assured this review is definitely safe for those of you who've never touched this game nor know anything about it.
Resident Evil 2.
As I almost always do with these reviews, I'm gonna start with the story of Resident Evil 2. Basically, the game opens up in Raccoon City, where the infamous Umbrella Corporation is headquartered. Unfortunately for the inhabitants of this extremely unlucky city, a virus has been unleashed and is turning everyone into zombies. The game allows you to play from the perspective of two characters, with you having to pick one before you start the game. Those characters are Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Leon Kennedy is a rookie cop and Claire Redfield is a college student. Honestly, picking either one is totally fine. There isn't really a best option in this case because both are equally fantastic. However, I personally picked Leon Kennedy for my first run and I thoroughly enjoyed it and I personally really like his character, so I will say starting with Leon is fun, but starting with Claire is totally fine too. It's totally up to your preferences. No matter which character you decide to start with, the prologue will be the exact same in both cases. Your character will head to a gas station that seems to be abandoned on the outskirts of Raccoon City and will encounter some unpleasant zombies. Eventually, your character will go outside and meet the other character that you did not choose to play as. The two escape together and head to the Raccoon City Police Department, which has been overrun, of course, by zombies. The city is for the most part totally hostile and overrun everywhere, so your main objective is to survive and escape at all costs. The story of Resident Evil 2 is very intense, but not very fast-paced. That's because Resident Evil 2 relies a ton on the dreadful suspense that is often present in horror movies and games. Coupled with some pretty sudden and intense jump scares, the game really does pitch you in the center of a very rough survival horror situation. The nice thing about Resident Evil 2 though, at least in my eyes, is that it's not slow-paced in the sense that I was bored and didn't feel like playing. On the contrary, I found that the ever-increasing suspense and the constant high alert that I had to be on was able to make the story enjoyable for me, and in fact, I didn't even want it to end. I can't really say much more than what I've said because I did promise no spoilers, so you'll have to play the game yourself to see what the story unfolds to be. It takes approximately 8.5 hours to complete if you're just going for finishing the story. However, if you want to be a completionist, it's obviously going to take you more time. There are two different scenarios for each character, which you unlock Scenario B for the character you didn't play after you play Scenario A for the first character. Scenario A for Leon and Claire are pretty much the same, but Scenario B provides most of the differences. Resident Evil 2's gameplay is mainly restricted to certain areas within the given map, forcing you to explore these areas and unlock new locations within the area as you go. There's a relatively heavy emphasis on puzzles, as is common in the survival horror genre. These puzzles serve as ways to block off locations you need to get to, and can also serve as ways to lock off areas that you can find items in and more. However, the puzzles are still doable. They're not very difficult, but if you're someone that really hates puzzles or you just can't stand them in games, then maybe the Resident Evil franchise will give you a bit of a hard time. For me, I'm a puzzle fan, so it wasn't that big of a deal, so take that as you will. Puzzle-wise, most of what you'll encounter is finding keys. These keys will unlock areas of the map that you need to get to in order to start the next sequence. The game is played in third person over the shoulder. For the most part, you have a limited amount of storage space and you have to conserve your ammunition very carefully because finding more ammunition is difficult. Basically, you can't really waste whatever ammo you have constantly. You eventually can expand your storage, but even then, it's still relatively limited, and you need to find the right balance between ammunition, crafting materials, tools, healing agents, keys, and more. The game provides you with 3 levels of difficulty, with the different levels providing you access to different weapons at the beginning. I don't recommend you go for the easiest level because it will just unlock you all the weapons for the most part, and that, I think, takes away from the fun of the game and the challenge that it has. Most of the combat is relatively light. You're mainly going to be shooting at things for the most part. Aiming for the head is also the only way to effectively down the zombies that are coming at you. Different zombies are easier to take out with different weapons, so going for unlocking some of the weapons early is obviously the right choice to make. If you're looking for a super fast, super action-packed game, that's not what Resident Evil 2 is 100% of the time. The linearity of the game and the survival horror techniques make it so that you're more focused on living rather than just rushing through and gunning everything in your path down. However, I will say that there are some very action-packed sequences in this game, so it's not entirely slow. I personally think it's a good balance between action and survival horror, and it blends well together to make an excellent game with great gameplay. You can survive a zombie biting you, but you'll be injured, which causes you to move in a sluggish manner. The only way you can regain your full strength is by healing yourself, but it's best to save healing agents for when you really need them. That's why it's important to learn how to avoid zombies, check corners, and be aware of your surroundings. I know that's a bit hard with the limited amount of light you get from most of this game, but it's important to keep these things in mind. I think the nice thing about the gameplay in Resident Evil 2 is that it's great for people who are familiar with the series and for people who are totally new to the series like myself. I found it easy to get into a good groove with the gameplay and I really enjoyed it. I do recommend that you find some guides online if you're stuck at certain areas to teach you some tips and tricks, because you may learn a lot from people who've played this game a ton of times before, especially if you're a newcomer to Resident Evil in general. If you're coming from the original Resident Evil 2, there are some obvious upgrades to the game, but there are also some great quality of life upgrades that make playing the game much easier and much more thorough. There's also no spiders this time around, which for someone like myself who absolutely despises the living daylights out of spiders in games, movies, shows, or anything, that's perfect. I want to focus a bit more specifically on gunplay for now because to me, gunplay is an important component of a game that uses guns. Duh. Resident Evil 2's gunplay is actually great. There's a good gunsmith system involved, you can use multiple types of attachments on your guns. This way, you adjust the way the guns play to suit your playstyle more. But the gunplay is good and very satisfying even at a base level. However, due to your limited amount of ammunition constantly, you need to be strategic with the guns you're using and when you're using them. Running out of ammo could be a costly mistake in the wrong situation like I said earlier, but using the wrong gun may put you in a position where you needed that gun later and now you can't use it when you need it the most. I played Resident Evil 2 with a controller and using keyboard and mouse, and I found that the quality of the gameplay did not go down with either input used, so it's obviously well suited for all styles of gameplay. I always find from a personal standpoint that a game with guns is easier for me on keyboard and mouse, but with a controller it's totally fine as well. So if you're not a keyboard and mouse person like myself, then playing with a controller is perfectly fine. Additionally, the nice thing about Resident Evil 2's remake is that it's really well optimized on PC. I didn't run into any problems, any bugs, any visual issues, so this has sometimes seemed to be a problem with many games lately when they try to port to PCs. However, I've played it on PC entirely, and again, I had no issues, so I totally recommend it if you're on PC, not just console. Visually speaking, this game is absolutely fantastic. Not only are the graphics amazing, but the character designs are awesome and the sound design is great. These things all complement each other to create an absolutely fantastic gaming experience because the visuals feel so real. The sound design only adds to the eerie and uncanny feelings in this game, and the zombies are actually pretty terrifying. I think one of the strongest parts about the Resident Evil 2 remake is the fact that it looks fantastic. The visuals look very realistic and the facial animations are great, which is something I think really speaks to the quality of this game. The soundtrack adds to the overall eerie levels of the game, making it a dark and disturbing experience that all around works out very well for its quality. You can really feel the emotions that Leon and Claire go through as they deal with the horrors ahead of them and the impending feelings of doom existent throughout the city. I also think the overall darkness that this game pits you in is perfect. This darkness only serves to increase the stakes in the game because you can barely see around you, but the consistent threat is always there and you're not sure from where it could come from. This is only heightened further by the visual quality of the game and the sound design. This game is quite bloody and gory though, so I do want to extend a small warning for those of you who are squeamish. A lot of the zombies and creatures can look a bit disturbing at times, and there are definitely some deaths that are not pretty to look at. However, if you're not bothered by this, then you have nothing to worry about. I do also want to note that there is a stalker character called Mr. X who will sometimes randomly try to attack you. Yes, when he shows up, it's a jump scare, so just warning you, there's definitely going to be some sudden, loud jump scares in this game. I think that Resident Evil 2 is honestly one of my favorite games I've ever played. From the story to the gameplay to the visuals, there's just so much going on in this game that works really well and does itself a ton of favors. I personally really enjoyed Resident Evil 2's remake, and I think that most people who play it will also enjoy it too. Even if you're not super familiar with the Resident Evil franchise as a whole, I think you'll still be able to enjoy this game because it stands alone really well, has a great story at its core, and is well written for sure. The dialogue feels natural, the immersion is there, and the gameplay is well done in my opinion. There's the right blend of everything in this game, and it really is peak survival horror. Personally, scoring this game from my standards, I'd say Resident Evil 2 is a 10 out of 10. Yeah, that's a very rare score for me to give out because even some games that I absolutely love, I don't give over an 8 out of 10 sometimes. However, for me, Resident Evil 2 is a peak game that is an absolute 10 out of 10. It's a great horror game, it's a great survival game, and it's a great game in general. Also, it's Resident Evil, and I have learned to have a great appreciation of this franchise. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. Comment below your thoughts on the Resident Evil franchise, more specifically of course Resident Evil 2, and don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, entertainment, and more. The link to that as well as all our other links are in the description below. See you all in the next video.